American entrepreneurs have the idea that if you're paying less, you're going to have lower quality. And the truth of the matter is when you outsource to these other countries where they have much lower cost of living, you're able to attract higher quality people for the same amount.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Abundant Journey podcast. Thank you for hanging out with us today. We are a show that is dedicated to giving you the stories of entrepreneurs and folks who have built incredible businesses in hopes that you can take their lessons that they've learned along the journey and apply them to your business, apply them to your life. We have some amazing guests hanging out with us today, Harley and Adrienne Green. Now, Nick, you and I have interviewed a ton of people, but I don't know that we've interviewed anybody out of the country at this point.
I don't think that we have, and so this definitely makes for a special one, and I just can't wait to hear the stories of the Green family. They're definitely doing life in a unique but an amazing way. So, yeah, man, you want to bring them in?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, y'all, thank you for hanging out with us today. How are things? Where are you? What's life looking like right now?
Thanks, guys, for having us. So we're Harley and Adrienne Green. Right now, we're living in the beautiful eternal spring city of Medellin, Colombia. We're kind of living the digital nomad lifestyle and exploring the world together.
I love that. And, you know, I teased it, but I said you guys were introduced to us from a few folks who we've had on the podcast multiple times. They're near and dear to our heart, Nick and Elaine Stogberg. And now you guys are not from Colombia, but you are from the States. So what got you there now?
Well, we have mostly virtual businesses at this point, and so in the fall when I was selling my real estate team, which was our last in-person thing, and we were kind of looking, well, what do we want our future to look like after this? We've always loved traveling. We've always hoped to live abroad for a period of time. And so selling our last, in-person business and being with virtual businesses, it was kind of like, why not? We do so much for, the pros and cons list, and because objectively it makes sense. And this was an opportunity to do something for fun because we enjoy it.
Yeah, I love that as far as, living that digital nomad lifestyle that you'd mentioned. Yeah, would love to hear. Okay, so what does that actually look like or mean? I mean, you mentioned a handful of kind of big topics here, but I'm sure our listeners are like, okay, that sounds great to go into virtual businesses, but what do you actually do?
Well, I'll say, a lot of this has been enabled from many years of diligent savings and investing. We've been investing in real estate for many years, really got super focused on it, starting around 2016, buying our first kind of standalone investment property. And things just kind of snowballed. We kept, rolling all the profits from one purchase into the next and the next and growing and leveling up with 1031 exchanges. And we've kind of transitioned from, direct ownership and single family homes to get into more commercial investments and partnerships so that we have the time and both in financial and time freedom to have this kind of lifestyle. And so we did a lot of domestic travel getting started with our kids. We had an RV for a couple years and did a lot of camping and traveling across the southern United States. And we've also done just other domestic travel, trying to, get used to, as a family, what it's like to not have a permanent home base.
That's interesting in the fact that I think so many people hear that concept and say, well, that sounds amazing. What do I need to do to get to that and their journey? And I'm sure we'll go as the conversation continues. But what I want to do is actually go back further. It's not often that we actually interview a married couple at the same time and have a conversation. So I'm curious, is entrepreneurship in your blood? Is it something that you guys both decided individually you were going to do and then you met one another? Or is that something that you were working the 9 to 5 and said, hey, this isn't enough for us? Well, go back as far as you guys want.
Well, I think we definitely do not have an entrepreneurial background or upbringing. To speak for Harley a little bit, he has a background as a computer engineer with a bachelor's and master's degree in that. And prior to entrepreneurship, he only ever worked as a computer programmer, computer engineer, And for myself, my background was very degree in business, expecting to work in business finance, very traditional paths. And then I didn't like working in business finance, so I became a teacher, a high school math teacher. And, for both of us, our first foray really, I think, into entrepreneurship was that we had a hobby farm, actually. So that was the first time we weren't working for someone else and we were working for ourselves.
That's awesome. I love the hobby farm as a place for entrepreneurship to get started. And I'd love to hear more about that, like what the hobby farm looked like and how that kind of spun off either into your first business, or did that spin off into real estate investing, or how did those things kind of start to merge?
Well, the hobby farm kind of came about in an interesting way. We were really into healthful living and healthy foods. And so we found that we wanted to learn how to do that ourselves. And so we had the opportunity to live on some acreage in Northern Virginia in the early 2010s. And, we learned the hard way about not using leverage in a business and how you can experience burnout and having no free time on the weekends and having something that is a passion and an interest suddenly becoming like a burden. And so we wanted to, that I think spurred us to think about what are other things we can do with our talents and our time to be more efficient. And so one of the things that we explored was real estate investing. We started out doing house hacking, although I don't know that term was coined when we started, but it was renting out some free space in the house we were living in. And it turned out our basement, we were coming back from a trip one day and talking about it, and we just pulled over at the next IKEA, filled up the truck with a bunch of kitchen cabinets and sinks and stuff like that to finish out our basement so it could be livable, and had a really great experience there. And we started doing more research into real estate investing and found there's tax benefits. It's a nice asset class that is diverse from the traditional investments in the stock market. It had just a lot of great benefits. And so then we ventured out, started getting the condos near where we live, self-managing those. And it just kind of took off from there. It got to the point where we felt we were missing out on some deals. And Adrienne was doing teaching at the time, and plus the hobby farm. And we're like, well, what could be something else that we do? And maybe Adrienne could get a real estate license and help us find the deals and get better deals, get better deal flow. And so she got started with a real estate license, and I'll let her kind of talk about that journey.
Yeah, so in 2018, I got my real estate license in Northern Virginia, thinking I would do it mostly for our own transactions, and yet I think like many, quickly evolving to helping others. And so I enjoyed being a real estate agent. That was, I think, our next evolution as entrepreneurs from the farming. The farming was kind of a farming fail, and yet we learned from it to take into our next evolution, which was me being a real estate agent. In 2020, we moved from Northern Virginia to Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so I restarted my real estate agent business there, not knowing anyone, and really leaned into helping investors because that was my niche. And Chattanooga is a great market, still is a great market for real estate investors. So I used my unique abilities and knowledge in that area and ended up building a team actually of agents working almost or primarily with real estate investors buying in Chattanooga.
And I, in thinking through your journey, one, you hit failing forward. The other thing that I think about is, investing in real estate is one really cool now, and it's really fun to talk about. But you guys really started doing that before it was super cool. So I'm curious, one, what are some lessons in those early years as you guys were failing forward and things you were learning along that early part of the journey? But maybe really, where did the education come from? Was it trial by fire and trial by error, or did you have somebody looking over your shoulder giving you advice? What did that look like?
We did not have any great mentors at the time. And really one of the reasons we thought about it was because of Harley's coworkers who would kind of just do the old school method of move on to a new house and rent their former house, right? And that's what they would do. And that was the extent of the people we knew in person who invested in real estate. So we started by asking them for their lease templates and made up something for our basement rental. And that's really how we got started. And I'd say lessons we learned in those early days were, this was again before Bigger Pockets and all these books were really big. And so we just were doing it very organically, very like, what do we think of? And so we were investing locally. We were investing where we could self-manage, right? We weren't thinking about long distance investing or any of these other more leveraged opportunities. And we evolved to do that later on.
Yeah. Another lesson I think we learned too was, we did really well at investing for like net worth growth. And that was great at the time when, I had a full-time W-2 career that I thought was great and I thought I'd never retire from until, I couldn't type anymore as a computer engineer. But things change. And, when we were looking to kind of transition and it got to the point where like, yeah, we had good cash flow, but it wasn't quite replacing all the money we were making, but we wanted to have that freedom to, have our lifestyle and not be tied to the W-2 career. It took, and we're still working on, how do we convert a lot of our investments from really great, highly leveraged, like net worth building investments to more cash flow investments to fund the lifestyle that we want to live now that we have like solid net worth that we're good with. And how do we, fund the day to day with these investments to have a really great lifestyle?
I love that. And one of the things that struck me as you were just sharing your story of how you got into the world of real estate investing in particular is just realizing you had a basement and then pulling over at the next IKEA and filling up the truck. And there seems like there's been a kind of snappiness in decision of where, you're not, it doesn't sound to me like you're overthinking these kinds of things. I am curious, like if you want to unpack just how do you go about making decisions, especially when it feels like there's some risk on the line. How do you approach risk? How do you think about, all right, what you need to know versus just taking action and figuring it out?
Well, I think I am more of the one who just jumps into things. Adrienne helps us with making sure we're doing the right analysis. It's been good sometimes, and sometimes we've made some investments that have been a little bit painful. One of the great things about real estate is you have a lot of exit strategies. And so even if your first exit strategy for why you bought something doesn't necessarily turn out, like, for example, we were doing a BRRRR one time, and we ended up having a lot more cost in it than what it was worth at the end. So we couldn't do that ideal, like flipping it and selling it or cash out and get all our money back. However, it still worked out to do the cash out refi, get most of our
No, I think that's super helpful. And it sounds like for real estate, it was the baseline for you guys. It was the launch pad for being able to try some different things and kind of start down this journey of, financial freedom. I love that. Adrienne, I want to focus a little bit on your the business side of being a realtor because not only were you guys buying investments, but you recognized, hey, there's a job here, and then really you kind of built out a team and built out some systems there. And so did you dive into that with that in mind? Because for with what you've shared so far, it sounds like this was also a business opportunity.
Right. And so, in Northern Virginia, when I first became an agent, Northern Virginia is a pretty high price point at the time, 2018. It was still around 550, 600 was the median sales price there. And so you could make a good living selling 10 houses a year. And so I really wasn't super strategic about it there. I did some good things. I did some good practices, but I wasn't really working the system. And then in 2020, we moved to Chattanooga. And Chattanooga's price point was more like 300,000, right? About half of that. And so I knew that in Chattanooga, I needed to be strategic because I needed to do a lot of deals to make the money I wanted to make. And so that's where I really honed in on how on real estate agent as a business and what I needed to do. And I had a business plan. I actually had a friend who was a business coach. We made a whole plan for when I went to Chattanooga. I used the Story Brand framework, which I highly recommend. If somebody's looking to set up their business, it worked really well for me. And I really niched down, which I know sometimes we want these generalists and sometimes we want to be very niche. And so I niched to real estate investors and meeting all of their needs and being the ultimate real estate investor agent. That was one thing. I think the business plan, niching down to one specific area. And then the third thing was setting up my business with virtual assistants, which we haven't really talked about much yet. But I use virtual assistants for all of our back end because, again, I was in a market with a median price of 300,000, and honestly, for my team, because we were dealing with investors, I think our average price point or median price point sales price, let's say for that first year, was like 175,000. So we were dealing with small transactions and small commissions, and so we had to be super efficient and super lean in order to be profitable. And so I leaned into virtual assistants for that. And we only ever have virtual assistants as all of our admin support. And that's what made the numbers work.
That's really cool. And yeah, I'd love to talk about virtual assistants since we're kind of heading that direction. I mean, it sounds like you were pretty early in terms of incorporating virtual assistants into your business. I know it's gained a lot of traction in the last couple of years, and you've been part of helping it gain traction and making virtual assistants more accessible to small business owners. So let's talk about how you first came across the opportunity to hire VAs, what that process looked like originally, and maybe that'll even bleed into what you're doing now related to VA businesses.
Sure. So before we left Northern Virginia for a few months, I was on a real estate team there, and they used virtual assistants, which was the first time I actually saw and experienced it firsthand. And so, for people in your audience who may be looking at being an agent or looking at being on a team, there is so much you can learn from being on a team. And I think, yes, you pay a portion of your commissions to the team, and yet, figure that like tuition. You're going to learn so much and have exposure to great people if you're on a great team. And I was for a few months before we moved. So it was my first exposure. And then, January 2021, I had all my Tennessee and Georgia state licenses because we were right on the state border, and I was ready to roll. And like I said, I just knew I needed to do a lot of deals in order to make the money I wanted to make. And I couldn't do that if I had to do every step in the contract to close process. If I had to do every email check-in with a lender, every email introduction between a prospective buyer and the lenders or the property managers or everyone else they needed to know in order to make an investment purchase. And so I made a job listing, brought on my first virtual assistant, brought him on full time because I knew that I needed 40 hours of someone doing all that busy work. And what I did is I just made videos. I made videos of every step because I first handed off things that were currently on my plate. So as I did that task, I made a video. I used Loom or I used the Zoom personal meeting room, and I just recorded the video, shared my screen, and walked through this is how you do it. The virtual assistant made the procedure, and then the virtual assistant executed it from there on out. And the other big tool that was helpful is a project management system. So I started with Asana, which was a little easier to use, and then I graduated as we got more complex as I started a real estate team and everything to Monday.com, which is more robust, I would say. It was really just creating these tasks in there, creating these recurring tasks and everything like that. So they knew what they had to do, and it linked to the procedure that they had made, and I was overseeing it.
Harley, one thing I wanted to ask, because I know you got your hands in the VA space, and we're going to continue down this path a little bit, but one thing that I think about is, Adrienne, you recognize the need for VAs in order to grow, in order to scale, in order to take a lot of this stuff off of your plate so you could focus on what you needed to do. What are some reasons people are combative to using VAs? And I'm sure, Harley, there's probably a lot of things going through your mind there, but I'm just curious, it seems like a no-brainer. I think Nick and I have shared that we use VA with video editing, and it has saved our life tremendously. And so thank you for that. But Harley, curious, what are some reasons people are maybe adverse to that and what that looks like?
Yeah, so there's a lot of really common kind of what I call objections. And so one of the first that we get is American entrepreneurs have the idea that if you're paying less, you're going to have lower quality. And the truth of the matter is when you outsource to these other countries where they have much lower cost of living, you're able to attract higher quality people for the same amount. So you can get for 15 to 20K a year US dollars a college-educated executive assistant with excellent English skills and great work experience. How many American entrepreneurs do you know have an executive assistant in their office that they will work for 15 to 20K?
None.
Exactly. And so, when you pull from countries like the Philippines, where let's say a surgeon makes only $13,000 a year salary, you can get some really high quality, highly educated, capable people for a really affordable rate for an American entrepreneur. So that's kind of the first major objection and, answer to that. The other one is just English. So it's like, hey, I want someone that speaks English well. Well, the great thing about the Philippines is English is one of the primary spoken languages there. They start learning it in the first grade. And even amongst people from different parts of the country, when they first meet, they will default to communicating in English because the regional dialects are so different there. They wouldn't be able to understand each other otherwise. And so we're able to get people from the Philippines that have great English skills, great education, great work experience, and save us a huge amount on our overhead costs.
Yeah. And do you want to talk about, 'cause you've got a business that now helps get business owners set up with VAs. And so I'd love to hear, how this has evolved for you, what that looked like to start that business. And then we can get into even what that looks like for companies to work with you.
Yeah. So in 2022, that was when I left my computer engineering job. We had really great income with rental properties. Adrienne's team was doing really well. And I was just kind of getting burned out. It felt like we were missing out on some incredible investing opportunities because I was tied to my computer working for someone else. And so we were thinking, what do we know really well that we could help other people with? And we had such great success leveraging the virtual assistants, both in the real estate team, as well as helping with managing our investment properties. And we saw, especially in the Chattanooga market where we were living, almost no one had even heard of virtual assistants. Everyone was still like doing it the hard way, grinding everything out themselves. And what I kind of observed was a lot of these small business owners were really just small job owners. They were working more hours than they would and making less money than if they had just gone and gotten a job at Walmart. And I was just like, there's a better way, folks. And so I went out, started networking with people and taking the lessons learned we had of how to interview, how to manage, how to communicate with, and find really amazing, talented people, and just make it a simple process so that the American business owners, they don't have to worry about, all right, well, I put a job listing out there. Now I've got 100 different applicants coming in. How do I even choose from them? We take care of all that with our team because we've done it so many times. We know exactly what to look for. We provide all the technology systems. So it's like, working with someone virtual, if you've never done it before, can be a little daunting. Like, how do I communicate with them? How do they make phone calls for me? How do I share files? And so we provide those technology infrastructure. We get the virtual phone service with a local area code, have the share drive where it's easy to have secure storage in the cloud, and then provide the project management system. So Adrienne mentioned how her team really leveraged Monday.com. We use that in Workergenics for all of our clients as well. It's just a super powerful tool to keep all the communication and tasking in one place so you know what's going on. And don't forget things like, did I text this to you? Did I email it to you? What's going on?
Man, that's awesome. I love that as you both learned through doing, then you were able to take that to the next level and say, what's a problem that we have? And you solved it, but then you turned around and said, well, how can we also help others solve that same problem? Because we're probably not just the only ones dealing with that issue. And so then you've been able to capitalize on that. Curious, as you really kind of brought that to the market, I mean, what were some of those reactions early on, and have people jumped in? And I mean, are they never going back, or what does that look like?
Well, I would throw out a couple things here. First is that people have to be willing to hand off tasks, right? And there's some mental shifts or mental blocks that come into play there, right? You have to realize, I think, that for me, there are some things other people can do better than I can do. And that's, I think, something that people, business owners, entrepreneurs have to realize, that you can get a virtual assistant who can do things better than you could do, like maybe social media, or like you guys were saying, video editing, right? Or like newsletters, like the monthly newsletter, the weekly newsletter, the email out was one of the veins of my existence. And to have somebody who came in and that was their passion and they could do it well was really freeing. And so I think that, entrepreneurs have to have that shift from thinking that they're the only one who can do it to realizing that not only can other people do it just as well, but potentially better, and that it's just going to be a win-win in that way. But that's one thing I'd throw out.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And it's kind of interesting. I don't know if it's because of value or what, I think Harley, you touched on that, like that entrepreneurs kind of feel like you get what you pay for. And so how can I really get high quality out of, somebody that I'm, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 a month compared to the same US worker that would be, gosh, three times that at least. And so being able to recognize that, yeah, there's talent all over the world, and being able to trust and hand that off, that's definitely a big deal. I would love to know just how you find those talented people. I imagine some of that's proprietary and part of your service with being able to set business owners up with the best of the best. But I know that's a big question for folks, is that it's like, well, in the US, I can interview somebody or have them come into my office. With the Philippines or an international hire, how do I really do any sort of vetting?
Yeah, that's the key. And the great thing is the internet has connected the whole world now. I mean, we're having this podcast from two different countries right now. And so it's the same thing with people in the Philippines. And there's multiple job listing websites out there where people can post. And then the issue is just like, you're going to get flooded with applicants. There are so many people there wanting these amazing jobs working for US companies that it can be daunting to sort through all those resumes and sort them out. And so one thing that we have found with our team is getting really clear with like rubrics. So having a rubric that you're going to evaluate each candidate on, and have thresholds where if they're below a certain score, you don't even bother doing a follow-up with them. Checking references. So making sure you call those references that they've worked with and make sure that they did a good job, and that the reason that they're available now is a legitimate story. So that's very important. And you can do that virtually as well with emails and phone conversations and video calls. The other thing is we've had great success now that we have an established virtual staffing agency with referrals. So we really encourage our employees to make good referrals. They get bonuses for that, and especially when they last a long time with us. And so we have found we get some of our best referral or best candidates now from existing employee referrals, because they know like, hey, I'm going to be rewarded and my friend's going to be rewarded for working at this great business where everyone supports each other. And so that's been really huge. Another set of tools we use is just online social media marketing. We've got specialized accounts in the Philippines for things like TikTok and Facebook groups where we share business tips and highlight what it's like working with us. And that brings in a lot of great candidates as well.
I know we're going to circle back to the VA opportunity here toward the end of the show. I want to go a little bit unique here, because you guys are unique in the fact that you're not in America, but you're still running multiple businesses. So I want to dive in for a couple minutes to some of the misconceptions that people believe or hear, whether it's financial freedom, entrepreneurship, business ownership. Again, you guys, I think, are unique in your journey, and that's why we're excited to have you on the show here. So, what I would think the classic person is, go buy this real estate so you can travel the world, or quit the W-2, the 9 to 5, so you can be your own boss, so that you can live the life that you want to live. Freedom is this thing that is kind of the carrot I think everybody's chasing, but you guys, I mean, you're on your journey, and you guys have clearly done some amazing things. So what are some things, in kind of reflecting back over this transition time into traveling and the businesses, what are some things that you guys maybe have heard or you guys have experienced and are like, yeah, that's spot on? And maybe what are some things that you reflect on and say, oh yeah, no, that's bogus?
Well, I'll throw out one thing, and then I'll hand it off to Harley. I think that, again, people, like you're saying, people use real estate investing all the time, and the carrot is freedom. And yet, so many people, when they get into real estate investing, they're really just going from working for someone else to working for themselves, right? They're not actually getting into that business owner role. And you have to be, and so that's why I say, if you're going into real estate investing for freedom, I would say realize that it is possible, and yet 90+% of people don't do that. And that's because you've got to set it up for freedom. And we didn't at first, right? We self-managed all our properties. We only bought things close enough that we could self-manage easily. We had a young family at the time. And we had to have a whole 180 shift to realize, like, this is not giving us the freedom that we wanted. And so I would say, if you're going to do real estate investing for freedom, from the beginning, think about or have a plan of, even if you've got to trade, you've got to do some sweat equity or something at the beginning, have a plan for how it's going to be leveraged and it's not going to take your manual labor. Whether that's that you're going to use a property manager, whether it's going to use you're going to bring in a VA to do that property management. But even when we moved to Chattanooga and we had local properties, we did not go by when a tenant called. We did not do our own showings. We treated them like we lived across the world, right? We paid a real estate agent to do the showings. We paid a real estate agent to do the initial walkthrough. We paid handymen to go through and do the work there, because if the numbers didn't work for us to be totally hands off, then it didn't work to actually give us freedom. And that was an evolution that we had to make, and we didn't do initially, but we learned it over time. That was one thing.
I love that evolution in terms of, because I do think I've talked with so many folks that they're buying up single family properties, and I think Harley, you said it earlier of like, wow, I've just created for myself a whole nother job. Like, this is not it's not nearly as romantic managing single family properties when you're getting the calls in the middle of the night about a toilet that's gone out and you're having to go and fix that. And as you scale up, that's just a whole lot more toilets that you're having to solve, unless you do exactly what you've said of, okay, start with the end in mind. And that's something that I'm really impressed with in your guys' story. Is I know you've used a good word in terms of evolutions to get there, but it does seem like you've really started with an end, an ideal lifestyle that you want to live. You've gotten a clear picture of that and figured out how to optimize to obtain that dream lifestyle. And so perhaps we could talk a bit about what that process has looked like for you when it comes to just designing your dream lifestyle and coming to that vision together for yourselves and your family.
So one thing that we've used, and we have got some really specific kind of interesting stories on how effective it is doing vision boarding. And so, having really clear goals each year that we work towards, and, what a vision of what we want our life to look like. And if you had even asked us, back when we were living in Virginia and had just kind of started doing real estate, like our vision and goals then were totally different than what we are now. Like, we did not have digital nomad world travelers on that list. We had something like Harley wanted to get a new truck and we wanted to get a beach house. That was like big evolutionary growth from being farmers, right? So we just put it on the list. And the crazy thing is, like, within a few months, even, it wasn't even like a year, we had those things. Like, we had gone down to Myrtle Beach for like a vacation, and we had lost out on a deal on a condo back when we were living in Virginia. So we had this like pre-approval letter. And as a real estate investor with a pre-approval letter, you're kind of dangerous. It's like money burning a hole in your pocket. And so, of course, Adrienne being the real estate agent, she's going on Zillow, looking at deals there in Myrtle Beach, just be like, what's the market like? And then we found some houses there that looked pretty and plugged in the numbers on Airbnb, and we're like, these numbers actually look pretty good. I think we could make more money here than we're making on the condos back in Virginia. And so we like called up an agent, we toured a property, put the offer in, and got our first short-term rental vacation home. And that was great for a lot of things. It helped us really start getting into that like hands-off approach, because if something breaks at a beach house that's 8 hours from where you live, you can't just go down there and fix it. So you are forced to have that hands-off leveraged system in place. And so that was really great for our evolution of, leveraging things. And we did that before we moved to Chattanooga. So then we took those lessons from that first beach house and applied them, like Adrienne said, to all of our investments, even though they could just be 2 blocks down from where we're living. We treated them like they were 8 hours away.
That's super good. I'm curious, as you both reflect back, there's the classic contrarian, I think, these days, who would say, oh, interest rates are too high, or it's too challenging of an environment. You guys took advantage of, early 2012, 2013, you started, and then you've been able to ride the wave. Not that I'm saying that, but I'm curious, for somebody on the sidelines looking in, saying, how do I get started? What does this look like? Can I still do this? Have I missed my opportunity? How would you guys encourage them?
Well, I would say back in when we were getting started, we thought things didn't look good too. There was a lot of deals where like, this doesn't make any sense. Now in retrospect, we're like, we should have bought every single thing that there was at the time, right? So that mindset happens all the time. And the truth is, there's always deals. Life happens. There's distressed buyers, things just come up where you can make it work. And we kind of talked about that earlier, just like there's multiple exit strategies. And even now there's so many more popularized acquisition strategies that we didn't even know about when we got started. We were just doing straight up, 20%, 25% down conventional investor mortgages. And, they worked out fine. People now have a lot more opportunities. Like house hacking is huge. Like I was just texting one of my coaching clients this morning, and he was saying how he made $18,000 just house hacking last year by getting a townhome that was a little bigger than he needed for himself, but then renting out all the other bedrooms in it. And he's now able to write off a lot of his expenses. He got his own personal living expense from $1,800 a month down to $800 because of the house hacking. And so that's an easy way people can get started. You're already going to be paying rent or a mortgage for where you live. Why not make it make money for you and become an asset instead of a liability? So it's just how hard you want to work to find those deals and what kind of level of comfort you're willing to make to have that future life that you want to have in a few years.
It's good.
One of the things we haven't really touched on yet is as you're living this nomadic lifestyle, digital nomad lifestyle, I should qualify, it's been an emerging trend, but often you see it with folks that are in their 20s, often before they're married, before they have kids. And y'all have been bold and brave to take on this new lifestyle, but as a family and with children, which I imagine has its challenges. And so I'd love to hear both the highs, unexpected things that have been wonderful about as a family doing this digital nomad lifestyle, as well as, what are some of the challenges and things that, as we've got listeners that listen and they say, wow, the Greens are living the dream. What are things that you would want for them to be aware of as they think about potentially following a similar path?
Well, I'll do a couple and I'll let Harley add what he wants to. So I would say first, one of the highs is that it really has been easier than I anticipated when we first contemplated it. So a couple specifics are schooling. So when we first contemplated this, even though I taught high school before, I was not relishing teaching my own young children. For reference, right now, they are ages 4, 6, and 8. And so taking them on with this really foundational stuff, I was dreading it and figuring out what to do online. And honestly, it's been great. It's been easy. We took them, we took the older two out of their school over Christmas break, a few months before we actually started traveling full time so that we could test out the homeschool program we had and everything like that. And it's really been great because we were able to customize the schooling to their kids. We're able to focus on just what they need to do and they get through their work really quickly. So there's not, it's not like school where they just spend a lot of time on busy work or on just the administrative bureaucracy of school. So it's been easier. Schooling specifically has been easier. And I guess also another high, and one of the things we love doing as a family is giving this exposure to our children, right? Letting them see what it's like. I didn't have this. We talk about all the time. When I was even my oldest child's age, I lived in Southern California, and I think the biggest trip we had done is maybe we've driven up the West Coast to Seattle once. And so to instead be wow, my kids have now lived in multiple countries and have all this exposure, I feel like it can only be a win for them. Now, low as a family is we do have to take more luggage, which just makes it a little more difficult to get through the airport and everything like that. And we have to, and it's more expensive than it would be, of course, for one person or two people. So when you think of, some solo digital nomads, they move to new locations every couple weeks. And for us, that would be a much bigger lift to do that. And it would be much more expensive because, we take up 5 seats on an airplane and everything like that. So one of the things as a family that we decided to do was to do more of slow travel. So we're spending 3 months in Colombia over 2 major locations. Then we're going to go spend 3.5 months in Mexico, again, over 2 locations. And so we've adjusted it a little bit for the fact that the flights and the travel are the most expensive for us as a family of five. And then also the work of traveling is a little more difficult for us as a family of five.
I think for me, one of the lessons that has been kind of high and that we didn't anticipate as much is, we're really big on budgeting. And that was one of the things that kind of helped us get financial freedom was budgeting and saving. And so before we took on this travel lifestyle, we made a new budget. We kind of anticipated, right, well, what is it going to cost to do plane tickets, how much we're going to spend on Uber and Airbnb and food. And reviewing our budget for the last 3 months that we've been doing this, it's actually been a lot more affordable than we anticipated, especially being in a country like Colombia, where the cost of living here is less than a third, maybe even a quarter of what it is, even in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is on the low end for the US. And so, we can eat out at restaurants like 4 times a week, and that we would never have thought of doing back in the US, and get really high quality, healthy food and still be less than just like getting groceries in home cooking back in the US. Another high has been getting household help. We really struggled getting household help back in the US. We would just, we'd get someone on, they'd be trained, and then they'd quit. And, it was hard finding people that were willing to do things like doing our laundry, cleaning the house, watching the kids. And here in Colombia, it's been so easy. We've got amazing household helpers that just cook really great fresh food. They've got the kids out at the playground right now so we can do this podcast. They show up on time. They're helpful, and it's super affordable. So, taking that plunge of going and doing the international living, if you do it in the right countries, you're not going to places that are really crazy expensive. You can actually save a lot of money doing it and have more money to do investing.
It's great. Well, and to piggyback off of that, a question that comes to mind for me is, as you guys have been on the journey and as you've jumped in, like you just said, Harley, take the plunge. Is there anything you wish you would have done differently or sooner, or, maybe structured things in a different way? Somebody looking on saying, hey, what would it look like to get on that path that you guys are on?
Well, honestly, it's gone really well. There's not been too many things that were like, oh man, I wish we were back in the US for this. Or structuring things we're still doing the businesses. We're still running real estate. We have those kind of typical business owner and investor challenges that we face. One of the nice things about starting off here in Colombia has been it's in effectively the central U.S. time zone. So being able to meet with U.S. clients and people that are helping us with our investment properties has been easy versus like if we had started out going to like Bali or Thailand or something where you're 12, 13 hour time zone difference, I think that would have been more of a challenge. Now we plan on going there next year and so we're going to face that challenge, but I would say, kind of easing into it, staying in like a U.S. time zone country has been really helpful. Getting our businesses set up before we left so they can be virtual. Like, Adrienne sold her real estate team. I think it would have been difficult to keep running that remotely. There's just kind of visual, just like people working for you when you're not there kind of in the trenches sometimes has optics that can make people uncomfortable and maybe like less ideal. So, certainly there is ways to do that and people have been successful running teams. For us, we just felt, it's better to have that tied up before starting this journey.
I think for my answer, I was thinking a little bit further back on our journey of everything with, wealth building and entrepreneurship and business creation. And in hindsight, being what it is, what I would say in terms of how we could have done it better is earlier on, like a lot with our farming, we weren't seeking outside resources as much as we could have, those mentors or those other higher level thoughts or people who are a step ahead or several steps ahead. So I'd say earlier on, I think if we had found mentors or those people who were a few steps ahead and followed them sooner, that would have been better. Other things I would say is if we had worked on our leadership and management skills sooner, because so much when you want to start leveraging and really 10xing your business, you're going to have to do it with the help of other people. And so many people who get into entrepreneurship or real estate investing or any of these things we're in, they don't have a background in that. They don't have a background in leadership. They don't have the skills and the knowledge. And you need to be intentional with working and building up those skills. So I think if we had started that even earlier, that would have been even better. And then the third thing is realize, like, failing forward and trying to fail as fast as possible and embracing failure as an opportunity, as a necessary step in the path instead of fearing failure. I feel like, as somebody who's trained real estate agents and everything like that, the fear of failure is such a limit on people's potential. And so being intentional, and it wasn't that we especially fear failure, but we weren't out there embracing failure. And so I would almost throw out there as a bold statement of like being willing to embrace failure and wanting to fail fast so that we can move forward and see what will work. If we had been really diligent with that, I think we would have gotten even further faster.
Yeah, I really love that perspective of being able to fail quickly. I mean, just kind of reframing failure in a positive light. Not that it makes it fun or that you want it in a way, but just recognizing that, hey, this is the pathway to growth. That failure is really, it's a signal of that you're trying, you're doing something, you're making improvements and making efforts and taking big steps. And it's amazing to see how well that's worked out for y'all. And I mean, there's definitely been calculation in the decisions that you've made. And so that, your failures do build upon one another and there's a clear trajectory. You're not just, totally shooting from the hip, making all these random decisions that don't build off of each other. But it is really cool to see how your story has come together like that. I know Nick's probably hungry to throw some golden nugget questions at you. If we got a couple more minutes for those, I'd love to hit you with some of them.
All right. So coming at you guys here, same questions we ask our guests. I think we've covered a few of these already, but I'm going to throw the first one at you. So we talk here at Abundant Journey about the 5 F's. We got family, faith, fitness, finance, and future. What's one of those things that each of you are focused on this year, and how are you focused on growing there?
I'll go ahead. So I think that part of the benefit of our travel time here is our focus on family, right? We are together all of the time. And so that is something that has really been good. And one of the other aspects of that I hit on specifically is the kids get to be together all of the time. Instead of my 3 kids being in 3 different classes where they only see each other at the end of the day, they're together all of the time. And I really, as someone, my only sibling is 15 years older than I am. And so while we have a great relationship, it's not like we're like BFFs, right? We're not super close. And the opportunity for these kids to form this bond where they're together all of the time, I feel like that's something that's going to just carry them through their whole lives and make a close connection.
I think one of the things that I've been working on is on that finance side. So, when you get to this point, you have a lot of opportunities. It's, what do you want to spend your time doing when you have the financial and time freedom? And, we still have this inner drive to want to make a difference and help people and, benefit our family. And so really analyzing all the opportunities that are available, whether you're wanting to do more real estate or you want to get more into commercial, do you want to start a new business or acquire a business? And so that's something that I have been looking at. Adrienne, of course, is heavily involved in that. We're analyzing opportunities. There's so many things that are out there. And doing things like networking, getting mentors, like Adrienne mentioned, is really helpful in that because you can see what have other people done that are where you want to be. And that's a great way, go ahead and copy and paste. Like that is a great way of doing business and setting up your life. And then you can always tailor that for what works best for you.
Love that. Those are both amazing answers. Next one here. Why is it important to have an abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset? And I'm going to add, because you guys are in Colombia and we've not had anybody on the podcast who's traveling the world, what does abundance look like with what you guys have just seen along your journey?
Well, I think in foreign countries where there's a lot of people who don't have a lot, right? There's a bigger difference between the haves and the have-nots, let's say, that you learn that abundance is a lot less than you might think in the U.S., right? Abundance is potentially having the opportunity to have all your family together. Somebody doesn't have to work away from the family in order to make money. Like your whole family can live in the same house, and that works. That's abundance, right? And being able to have food on the table. We definitely have met people where they're going without dinner that night because that's just, they don't have the money for it, right? Things like that. So it definitely, and I hope this translates to my children to understand how very fortunate we are in that regard. And I would say I am all about the abundance mindset versus the scarcity mindset. And, I'm working with so many people in agents and real estate investors and everything. I see such a stark difference in what people can accomplish within that abundance versus scarcity mindset. And that's something we really actually work on with our children. So even my 8-year-old, we talk about things, we phrase things often in terms of the gap and the gain, like that book, right? Are you in a gap mindset or a gain mindset? And my 8-year-old uses that terminology, and she calls us out. She's like, "You're talking in a gap mindset instead of a gain mindset." And well, it's kind of funny. Like I thank her for that because she keeps us honest.
Yeah, having the abundance mindset is really powerful, especially when thinking about investing. Adrienne kind of hit on this, where it's one of the things that we do is private money lending, and we talk to a lot of our borrowers, and there's sometimes fear and doubt, and like, oh, the market's not good, there's no deals, how am I going to make this work? And oftentimes we say, look, you just got to do it. If the numbers work and you're feeling good about it, don't worry about all the possible bad things. Think about all the possible good things that can happen from this, and pull the trigger, and it works out. That's the great thing with having that mindset, and you're kind of opening yourself up to others that have that same mindset, and just it's incredible the kind of solutions that happen. Just from Nick, when you and I first met, we exchanged some connections after that for me personally have been very helpful in addressing some challenges I'm having with some of our investments. And, it comes from that, being abundant. It's like, we're not going to keep all these people that we know to ourselves because they're going to help us. It's like, let's share our resources, let's share our knowledge, tell people how to do it, connect them. And it just compounds from there.
Better together is the phrase that comes to mind, and you guys are living that, and I love that. I feel like we could do an entire episode just on the last 3 minutes, but maybe round 2 at some point. Next question here. I think I might know the answer to it, but are you guys journey or destination people, and how has that impacted where you are today?
I'm definitely a journey person, I think. This lifestyle has really helped kind of solidify that, where it's like you really just need to enjoy where you're at. You need to accept yourself, accept the situation, kind of get that fully integrated. And once you've done that, you're able to, be free from limiting beliefs and, fully embrace and enjoy what you're going through. And that opens you up then for greater things and improvement.
I would say I'm a recovering destination person. I have been that way and realized that it is better to enjoy the process along the way, because that's kind of the whole point.
I love that. I don't know that we've had anybody say a recovering ex-destination person. That's a great answer. I love that. Yeah. Last one here. And again, I'm more curious because in many ways you guys are living people's dreams right now. But what is a dream or goal that you guys have that you've not been able to make happen yet?
That's a tough question. We are living the dream. Of course, we've got, more things we want to accomplish, and thinking big is always huge for us. One thing that we've talked about just even recently is making a home base in an international location, potentially here in Medellin. And so that's something we're exploring. We're still learning a lot about it. There's definitely some limiting beliefs that I'm personally working through about investing in a foreign country. So I think that might be a new kind of level up for us.
I think for me, I feel like I know that there's so much in my head, and I sometimes assume that everybody else knows it too. And then I'll be on a call with someone and I realize how much of a gap there is. And so for me, something that I haven't been able to realize that is, having a form or a format, something I'm working on with making, a course and everything of where I can add abundant value to other people's lives, sharing more of what I've known and learned along the way to help them get further faster. So I feel like that's important to me, that as a past teacher to help people with what's in my head to make their lives easier.
I love that. Adrienne, Harley, just such a remarkable story and a remarkable life that you're leading. I know that even in the time here, we're just scratching the surface on your experience and everything that you have learned and have to share. But I'm grateful, Adrienne, as you had just said, and that desire to help continue to teach and educate people, to share your story, to add value to folks that way, for all the ways that you're building businesses to improve others' lives, make the world a better place. It's really, really cool to see. And so totally makes sense why Stoggebergs would say, hey, you got to have the greens on. There's a ton of commonality here, which I love. For our listeners that want to follow along or want to get to know y'all better, what are some of the best places that you want for them to check out and go?
For me, I would say my website, adriennegreen.com, ADRIENNEGREEN.com. I have a tool there for real estate investors to help them run their investments like a business, so they can get that for free and to hopefully give them the time and financial freedom they actually want for investing. And also you can link to all of my socials from that website.
Cool.
And if people want to get connected with me, our website is Workergenics, WORKERGENIX.com. And you can get in touch with me. I'm happy to do networking with other investors and help share our knowledge and wisdom and help them along their journey as well. And if they want to think about delegating more and getting a virtual assistant to help grow their businesses, we can help with that as well.
Perfect. And listeners, you can find those links nice and easy in the show notes and the description below. So do be sure to check that out. Follow along with Adrienne and Harley and what they're doing. And also, while you're down there, check out abundantjourney.net. Make sure that you're following along with other podcast episodes. Give this episode a share with anybody that you know that could benefit from VAs or investor tools, or who's just interested in living that digital nomad lifestyle. But Adrienne, Harley, once again, thank you so much for your time. So good to connect with you. I can't wait to continue to catch up and hear where life takes you. And partly, I just want to touch base every couple of months just to see where in the world you are. It'll be fun. But thank you all for your time, and we look forward to talking again soon.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Awesome.